and I'm really, really excited to have my guest, Marci Melzer, on. She is going to be sharing with us the power of communication and connection and help us and myself as a parent of a child who had communication and speech issues. So much of what she talks about just completely resonates with me, and I'm really hoping, that it will resonate with you. Marci is an intuitive speech language pathologist, a language facilitation coach, and consultant. She provides speech and language therapy as well as national professional education talks in the speech therapy system for 3 decades. And she left when she and her clients were not finding success. Marci's specialty is training and coaching parents and caregivers to connect with their kids who are not talking yet and to use natural language facilitation strategies to help them find and use their own spoken language faster and easier than speech therapy. Amazing. Marci's strategies are specifically designed to equip, motivate, and empower those who struggle with speech to work harder and develop the language they need to share their wisdom with the world. Marci's online Waves of Communication platform provides resources so parents can try language facilitation and prove to themselves how powerful they are as language facilitators. I absolutely love that. Marci produces a wide range of free online language facilitation resources via her Waves of Communication social media platforms. Her YouTube videos, books, online courses, and coaching services have successfully helped families who live in more than 20 countries and use her language facilitation strategies to help kids use spoken language naturally. I cannot tell you how excited I am to welcome Marci Melzer to the Grounded Awakening. Welcome, Marci.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here.
This is such a powerful conversation, I think, that we're having. For all of you moms out there, parents out there, caregivers out there who really are frustrated with the system, this conversation is one you're really going to want to tune into, and you're going to want to connect with Marci after the show. Marci, I'd love for you to share with my listeners, how did you get to this place? Tell me about your journey and where your Grounded Awakening came.
Yeah, so it kind of takes one, doesn't it? Sometimes, and I'm subscribed. I'm there. I've done my Grounded Awakening. So it all started a number of years ago when I was finding myself to feel quite disempowered as a speech therapist working in the system myself. First, it was taking me up to a year to get paid. Second, I was not finding myself. I was finding myself exhausted and not doing what I originally signed up for as a speech therapist. I signed up to help people. I signed up to help people make success and find success and improve themselves and improve through communication.
Yes.
And the system was becoming more about labels and numbers, insurance numbers, and did the label match the insurance numbers? And I was really finding anywhere that I could work in the system. That was the first conversation. It wasn't about what's going on with this family or what's going on with this child or what are they really struggling with. Before you could even have that conversation with a person, you had to get their digits, you had to get their diagnosis, you had to get all this stuff. And it was getting in the way. And so I tried for years to finagle myself and work around the system. As a contractor, I would, okay, I'll do it your way and then do it my way. As soon as I could get in front of a family, I was good. But then it became that the system just shut me down, kind of like all these awakenings happening. You try to change the system as long as you can until you just can't function in it anymore. And then you leave and you decide, what are you going to do? And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll quit speech therapy because I just couldn't find a place Jennifer, anywhere. I could not find a place in education or healthcare or private or public or government or anywhere to get away from it. And so what do you do when you can't get away from it? You leave it and you figure out what you're going to do. And I thought, oh, I'll do neuro-linguistic programming or something that I can really help people connect, because I knew that that was what was important. And then I had my eat, pray, love moment. I went to Peru. I realized what energy is. And I realized what it was that was helping these people succeed was not me. It was them connecting and learning from me and connecting with their child. And when I looked at, because I went and I talked to some people who were like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, well, what can you do? And I said, well, I know when I connect with a mom and show her how to connect with her child, then magic happens. It's funny, like how you talk about it like that. But when everything falls into place, right? That's when they see the progress. And that's why I talk about how this method works so much faster than therapy, because I decided, all right, now I have a choice. I left the system. I can pick who I want to work with. And I decided I only want to work with people who want to connect with me and learn for themselves and take responsibility and not pan it off on me or anybody else to fix their kid. Because first of all, they're not broken. They're just, the process got blocked. It's a natural process, spoken language development, and it gets blocked. Sometimes by physical things, but a lot of times by environmental and especially mindset things, because we're talking about a job that you have to work hard to develop. And if you don't work hard at it, it doesn't develop. And I think that's what the biggest problem is. When I found people who wanted to work hard, they saw progress. But the people who wanted to not take responsibility and do the work, they didn't. And when I worked in the system, I didn't pick. I was just given lists of names of people, and I'd show up, and some of them would be ready and some of them wouldn't. I figured they came into 3 categories: those that were ready now, those that were potentially ready, or already the system was starting to break down and they were starting to look into themselves, and then those that just couldn't, that just wouldn't, that were completely reliant on the system. And I realized through my waves of communication platform that people shift in between those levels. Sometimes they're all in and they're ready to do it, and then something happens. Their mindset gets triggered, or they hear something from somebody, their kid gets a diagnosis or a label or something like that, and then they go like this. They can't handle it anymore. And so what I figured out was, through working with people who trusted me to teach them and connect with their kids and do it, I learned what it takes. I learned how to find the balance. And I think that's the key that I have found in happiness in myself, is I'm happy doing what I want because I found the balance. I found the people who want to work with me, and I don't talk to those other people anymore.
Yeah. So much of what you just said, there's so many awesome nuggets in what you just said there. And coming from a place of, both being that parent who had a child that had major speech delays. My son's stroke affected his speech center. So literally we started on getting speech therapy at the age of 17 months. And that was me advocating for that because they weren't going to give it to him.
Right.
But he had that diagnosis of having had the neonatal stroke that got him that. So when you talk about labels, and so many parents resist the labels, but unfortunately in this day and age, in this healthcare system, you need a label in order to get the services. So I hear your frustration with that, but I also understand sometimes as a parent, it's okay to put that label on them. It doesn't mean that's who they are. It means that that's what they need to get what they need in that moment.
Yeah, as
But
long as you use it the right way. I think, what
absolutely.
you did was you had to analyze both your child and the system. And
Yes.
just like I did for all those years, for 30 years, while I tried to find my way to work in the system,
Yes.
that's what parents have to do until the system breaks down. It basically breaks down when it can't help you anymore.
Right.
Because at the beginning, you just need help. You just need
Well,
help. You
and
don't know what to do.
you need to be failing in order to get help. So when you start succeeding, sometimes unfortunately, that's when the services get removed. But this is where, as an empowered parent and as an involved and connected parent, you can use the strategies that you talk about to continue to help your child communicate. That was key for me. And one of the things that you talked about, there were a couple key points that I jotted down, but one of the key points is really, number one, being that empowered and connected parent, being the parent that is willing, and I was that parent, but I have friends of mine that were not that parent, being the parent that's willing to actually pause and prioritize the speech therapy. I know that's not what you call yourself, but the language based skills
Yeah.
that are being provided. I mean, I remember changing all of the toys I had for my son. I remember watching when the therapist was working with my son so I could continue that work. And she would tell me how, she so appreciated it, but she also, I mean, we're still friends to this day. And my son's 19, but she would tell me how there's a lot of her clients whose the parents would just leave like a built-in babysitter. And so that really speaks to really being, I mean, it goes along with the whole healthcare problem, I think, which is you have the people that are like, here, fix me, or give me the quick fix answer. I don't want to do the work. And then you have the people that are like, okay, I recognize there's a problem. I want to be empowered. I want to be a part of the solution. Tell me what I can do. But I think what stops a lot of parents, and I was one of those parents, is that total overwhelm, the stress, the guilt, the shame. And really, sometimes that, I like to say, blocks our magic. We have to move through that, and we have to recognize that we have to pause, we have to reset, but we have to really connect, not just to ourselves and what we need, but to our children and what it is that they need to not just survive, but to thrive. So I love everything you're talking about. It's just, I mean, you're speaking my language, Marci. Um, can you speak a little bit about COVID? Because I know COVID was a platform, opened up an opportunity. I
Yeah.
truly believe that there are opportunities in all challenges. There are, when you're open to the possibilities and you're willing to kind of shift and grow, that's how you thrive. So during COVID, there were a lot of services that were ended for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know that they talked about the mask and covering the face and how that
Yeah.
impaired communication for kids. So I'd love it if you can just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think the thing that COVID did, the positive thing that you're talking about, is what it did primarily was it proved to people how powerful they are. Because I think that before COVID, and I remember I have said this myself, I could never homeschool my children, and I didn't.
I
Somebody
tried, it
else
didn't work.
did. You know what I mean? Somebody else did. Somebody else potty trained my children. I mean, being totally honest, I wasn't capable of doing that. Now, I was capable of doing a lot of other things for them, but I was also a single parent. So, as a single parent with all of the other plates I had in the air, I prioritized feeding and finding the right person to potty train my kids. So,
Yeah.
just talking about that basic thing, it wasn't that I couldn't, but it wouldn't have happened as well as it
Right.
did, because somebody, I mean, they would have figured it out. It would have been really messy for a lot longer. And you can look at that situation very much like COVID, right? So
Yes.
here you are in a situation where it could be really messy, or you can find the solution, the resources, because it doesn't have to be somebody else. It can just be a different way of doing things, because I think that's what a lot of people did at home. Was they said, I could never be home working with my child in the house, my child who's nonverbal in the house with me all day, because my nonverbal child makes noises all day and I work online. And
Yeah.
how can that happen? And they did. They figured it out. They figured out what it took to keep their kid quiet. They scheduled things around things. They used the resources that were available, and they were different for everybody. And
Right.
what happens, like you said, when one resource, especially the one that you rely on, the
Yeah.
main thing, I send my kid there every day, when that drops out of your life, suddenly you start to realize that you might have more resources available to you, even inside of you,
Yeah.
than you thought you had before. And that's what parents did. And even parents who are working with me. Now, I have a lifetime program. So parents can sign on, work with me to get trained. And again, I don't mind signing them on for lifetime because my job is to teach them to not need me, to
Yeah.
rely on themselves, but be available when they do, because we call it waves of communication because of the ups and
Yeah.
downs.
Yeah.
Just like you can be one moment, it can change moment to moment, but definitely day to day, month to month, year to year. It
Yeah.
can change based on your resources available. When you don't have much money, you freak out more. When you got more money, things are more relaxed. When you got more help, things are more relaxed. When you're all on your own, things are more stressed. And the reality is, like you said, the smart parents who realize where we are and what role they can play. Now, there's things, of course, that aren't out of their control. There is
Yeah.
no place to send your kid to anymore. But what is in
Right.
my control? And I think that's what parents stop to think about. And the ones that couldn't figure it out, the ones that kind of can't see the forest for the trees because of overwhelm, because they didn't even realize, Jennifer, how much they were relying on other people to do these things that they really do need to
Yeah.
take responsibility for. And spoken language is one of them. So here's a good example. A lot of kids, very much like your son, who are late talking from very early, got to be reliant on picture communication system boards and stuff like that at the school, because the school has to use these picture systems to keep 5 or 6 kids in a classroom on the same page. The school's job is to keep them all together. And a lot of parents, those things never hit the light of day outside the backpack when they
Right.
come home. They don't. And so now they realize that all the time their kid was spending at school in speech therapy,
Mhm.
they were working on these picture systems that help them be successful at the school. And suddenly these parents were like, getting on the speech therapy, and they'd say, "How's it going with your picture board or book or whatever?" And the parents were embarrassed to
Yeah.
say, "I'm not doing that." Or they would lie, or they would, whatever,
Mhm.
because of it. And the problem with that situation was that therapist wasn't empowering the parents to be successful in their new environment. The environment changed. This kiddo's got to be successful all day, every day in their
Right.
house with a mom who's not using that system. And so the parents that were working with me, that were half in, half out, right? Remember
Mhm.
the ones in the middle, the half
Mhm.
in, half outs, the ones that are, yeah, Marci, I'll follow you, but they're still really relying on other
Yeah.
people. Now, during COVID, they couldn't rely on it at all. They had to go all in, kind of like when I finally left the speech therapy world and said,
Right.
"Look, let's not consider those options for a minute and look at what you have." And what I trained parents to do was look at what they did have available during COVID. Could they go out? Could they not? How did they get motor activities in? How did they replace the things that they were missing, right?
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
lost babysitters and outside time and
Mhm.
sunshine and all of that stuff. How are they replacing that with something that the child needs, that they need to fill in those blanks? And a lot of them found, Jennifer, that they themselves could come up with better options
Mm.
than they were relying on before the pandemic. And as a result, the parents that are working with me took their kids back for their new IEPs. Okay, school's open back up. It's been 18 months. What have you been doing? How far behind are you? And my clients were ahead of their peers. They met all those IEP
Yeah.
goals in future because their parents were teaching them to be functional out in the world, to share their spoken language,
Mhm.
not pictures that work in the classroom, but real speech that works with whoever was around them.
Yeah.
We don't know who that was, whoever it was.
Right. Well, and I gotta say, one of the things that I've seen with myself and also just with clients and people in general is We live in such a distracted world. We live in a place where we're all trying to like multitask and we're not really present in our life. And even the best intentioned parents, I will speak as one of those parents. It's easy sometimes to be distracted trying to do something else. You get a little impatient with your child and you're not necessarily connecting to what do they need in this moment. So, I mean, I know with my son, he still has speech issues. His difficulty now, and it creates a lot of social anxiety for him, is his ability to retrieve words to be able to participate in a conversation. So, as a teenager, conversations happen fast, they change.
Yeah.
And one of my frustrations in school was he wasn't necessarily getting speech therapy, but they were giving him speech as a way to help him with social pragmatics. But it was
That's
in a very
Yeah, that's still, it's all about, it's not just about how many words come out or
right,
how well you follow directions.
right,
It's about, can you use spoken language, not just for getting what you want, but sharing your ideas and
right,
arguing and my
right.
opinion or a
Yeah,
disagreement, negotiation, all the
absolutely.
reasons that we need to use talking. And I think school tends to focus on just the requesting part.
Absolutely.
But
Well, and the
parents,
function part in the classroom
right,
versus, let's face it, for so many kids, it is a social emotional thing. It is about expressing your needs, about participating, about connection. And
yes,
I mean, I see that with my son. I see that even my second son, the one who had leukemia, from the high risk or high dose chemotherapy he got, he has some verbal reasoning issues.
yeah, yeah,
So when there's verbal discussions in the classroom, he gets very anxious because he has
yeah.
trouble, again, it's like the retrieval, the executive functioning part of speech and language and communication. But
So
I feel like
the good news is you can improve that. You can improve that even with kids like, when we think that's the problem, I think one of the things that happens, like you said, the diagnosis, if you get a severe one,
yeah,
like, a cognitive brain injury
mhm,
or, stroke, like your son,
yeah,
sometimes they write these kids off
yeah,
a lot faster than they equip them. Now, it might take longer. But what we know about neuroplasticity is
mm,
that through the correct repetitive engagement, and we're
mhm,
not talking about repetitive activity, we're talking about repetitive work,
mhm,
real effort and work. Like, how do basketball players become expert basketball players? They don't just throw hoops, they
yeah,
play games. They play
yes,
games. They actually engage with other people who block them and try to
yeah,
stop them and get in their way. Oh, I have to, because it's not just
yeah,
about you, it's about you navigating your environment. And I think this is the component of language facilitation, that the connection part,
yeah,
that is what works, is the magic juice. I call
mhm,
it the language facilitation zone. When you
mhm,
can connect in the same energy, frequency, vibration space, even, because that distraction is no joke. When you're not
yes,
together, you're not together.
right,
And when you're not together and thinking about the same thing, you can't use that telepathy, that natural intuitive telepathy, because that's how you know when your child is 17 months old and they can't even process like other
mhm,
kids can, but they're still communicating every single minute of every day,
yeah,
non-verbally letting you know what they need, how they feel, that they want
mhm,
this, that they don't want this, that they're happy with you, that they're not happy with
mhm,
you. Even when they're tiny babies, they're doing this.
yeah,
And you're using your intuition. What does he want? What does he
yeah,
need? What does he?
yeah,
And what happens sometimes when kids get to your kid's stage is they separate because they say, oh, well, the kid knows how to say words. He
mm,
doesn't need me
mm,
to still reach in and help him bring his wisdom out in a gentle, kind, loving way. Not say this, don't say this, say this. It's
mhm,
good to say this, it's bad to
mhm,
say this, all of that business.
mm,
That's what
mhm,
they grew up with in therapy. Is it right? Is it wrong? Not
mm,
is it from your heart? Because when you
yeah,
say something from your heart, it's never wrong. It's
Right.
never wrong. It might not be grammatically correct, but you can definitely get your message across. And your kids
Yeah.
at preteen, teenage, they're at these, they got a lot to
Oh,
say.
yeah. Yeah, and you know what? When both my boys, when they're relaxed, and that's the key. I mean, my big thing is stress management, and I have a course that I'm about to launch called Stress SOS, which is basically giving parents first the tools to reset their nervous system, pause so they can connect to what is it that I need in this moment. Same thing for kids. And that's what I've taught my kids to do.
That's
Is
brilliant.
yeah,
That is
because
brilliant. So the
right.
people who are following on Waves of Communication, you guys, stay tuned for this from Jennifer, because this connection is the key. If you
Yes.
feel like you're stuck, it doesn't matter if your kids hit the wall,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, we've hit the
In the,
wall.
in the workbook that I wrote, there's a line. I give level charts because people like level charts.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I give this line where below this line, they're spinning their wheels, nothing's happening. And
Yeah.
above this line, sky's the limit.
It's
And
where
it's
the magic
all about,
happens. Yeah. Because when you calm yourself down first as the parent, you reset your nervous system, then you can connect to that intuition. You can respond versus react. And I'll say, I mean, one of the mistakes, and I will tell all the listeners out there, maybe some of you can resonate with this, but I have made the mistake, and I still sometimes make the mistake of talking for my child, because it can be painful to watch him struggle. It can be painful to watch him try to communicate and people don't understand what he's saying. Or he'll look at me kind of like, are you going to take this? And it was interesting because his former, you know, from 17 months to 3 years from early intervention, his speech therapist, Amy Bond, if you're listening, he did an amazing documentary film about what it's like to have an invisible disability. And he interviewed people in his life, and she was one of the people he interviewed. And she flat out turned to me and said, "You have to stop talking for him." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But it really hit me because we sometimes as parents want to make things easier. We want to sweep the path, but we're actually not helping them. We're not helping them connect to what their needs are because we're bypassing them and taking over. So I've done that. And to all your parents out there, and I'd love for you to do you have
yeah.
any tips on
I
parents?
do, I do, I do. Yes, 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 yes. And this is the biggest thing, you see, because these moms love their kids more than anything, and they
Yes.
want them to do it. And they see other moms doing it on my channel, and they're like, I want that for my kid. And
Yeah.
I will do anything. They'll give their left arm, they'll give their right arm,
Absolutely.
they'll give their
Yep.
head, they'll give everything
Mother's love.
to do
Yep.
this to their kids, right? And the thing is, here is the deal. And this is why we talk about how powerful you are. Because you as a parent, yes, you can do anything for your kid. You can advocate for them. You can buy services. You can get people to do everything for them. But are you actually equipping and empowering them to be the adults that you want them to be in life? And you do want them to be that, but you're afraid. And that's the only thing. You're just afraid that they're going to fall. You're afraid that they're going to make mistakes. You're afraid they're going to be embarrassed. Like you said, I'm afraid that people are going to make fun of him. Well, I'll tell you what. The thing is, you have to trust yourself and trust your child, because
Yeah.
your boys, they want to go make friends. They want to go talk about rockets or
Desperately. Yeah.
space or dinosaurs or whatever they want to talk. And they don't want you
No.
there over their shoulder saying he likes Tyrannosaurus Rex or he's very excited about Mars. And they're like, oh, great. Now you've just made me look like I'm not able. You've enabled me to
Yes.
look even more ignorant than
Yes.
these people are treating me, because you see people, you have seen them treat
Yes.
these kids like this. And remember, this is a mindset block. This is a mindset block. So I'm really super happy that you brought it up, that it happens to you. And that's why we call it Waves of Communication. And the good news is when it happens, because it always happens to everybody, that you feel like you're not enough. And
Mhm.
so you got to do more. I
Yeah.
got to do more. I'm not enough. I got to do more. I'm not enough. I got to do more. And the thing that you have to do is equip the late talker, because remember, they're not going to talk. That neuroplasticity is not going to happen by you programming it. You
No.
can't plug a wire into that brain. They have to do the work. And my first book is called If It Isn't Fun, It Isn't Fun. And with any kid, if it isn't fun, they won't do the work. So we need them to do the work. We've got to make the work fun, and we've got to make it meaningful, because it doesn't matter how hard it is. If a late talker wants to talk, they'll talk. If a late walker wants to walk, they'll walk. But they have to want it. They
Right.
don't do it based on your rewards, or if you talk, I'll give you a cookie, or that stuff fades fast.
Yep.
It is self-empowerment.
Right.
It helps a late talker overcome a neurological illness like your son has.
Yeah.
It's
No,
a big job.
absolutely. And, I will say, my son, he amazes me every day. Like our
They work so hard.
yes.
So
And one of the
hard.
things that we say all the time, our motto is never underestimate the things I can do. And he can do anything. He just
Yeah.
doesn't do it like everybody else, but that
Right.
doesn't matter. It's what
Right.
makes him so beautifully, uniquely him. And so I love this. And, again, speaking to all the parents out there, if you're struggling and you feel like, you know what, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. I'm too busy. I'm too this. It's really about prioritization. And it doesn't mean you have to do this and not have support or not have somebody work with you. It means that you show up for when you can show up, and
Yep.
you understand what it is that your child needs. Talk to whoever's working with your child on speech and language facilitation, and find out, what can I do at home to be consistent? So when you see your child being frustrated, and I'll tell you what, and Marci, you can speak on this if you want, but 99% of behavioral problems happen, especially with boys, I will say, happen because they are frustrated,
Yeah,
because they don't feel seen, heard, or understood,
that's right.
right? So when we can connect to what is it that our child needs in this moment, which means we have to pause and stop what we're doing to actually tune into them. And for me as a parent, they are my priority.
Yeah.
And even if I can't do it in that moment, it's something that I need to go back and revisit with them, or I need to stop what I'm doing before. It's like de-escalating a situation when you start to see it happen. And then I have learned as a parent, I need to communicate with anybody working with my son so they can understand him and they can understand his signals. It's amazing. He's on a gap year program right now. He's in Central America. And we've had a couple of conversations with the instructors that are with them. And one of the things that I've done is to help them understand, what are the signs that he's starting to get frustrated, that he's starting to get anxious, or that he's having trouble having a communication breakdown. And just understanding him, coming up with signals, helping people around them be aware of that, is empowering, not just for them, but for my son. So
Yeah, because they're learning to communicate with him at his level. And again, if you're in the facilitator role, you give them more language than they need, but it's also your job as facilitator to help them be successful wherever they go. And what you talked about is a big part of your job as language facilitator. Just because you're the one that gets them talking through your language models and your encouragements and all of that stuff doesn't mean that other people will do that.
right.
They don't know how to connect with your late talker because your late talker is unique. And I
Yep.
see somebody talking about vaccines as the
I know.
cause of the problem, but the
No.
reality is it doesn't matter
No.
what causes
It
the
is what it
child
is.
to see late. It is what it is,
Right.
exactly. And it's not
Yes.
about chasing after, okay, it's toxin, so I've got to get detoxed. It's about it. It's not. It's about connection. It's
Yes.
not because we're talking about speech and we're
Yep.
talking about neurological development that happens naturally through listening to and processing and practicing talking. It's the only thing. You can't learn to walk without walking. You
Yes.
can't learn to talk without talking. And you don't walk by taking one step and then stopping and one step and then stopping. You walk by walking, having conversations. So
Yeah.
the things that you talked about, reading with your kids, talking with your kids. I know we didn't talk about strategies yet.
No, I was going to get there,
These are
but
the
yeah.
things, right? These are the things that you kind of take for granted. And especially if you've got an older kid who doesn't appear to be listening to you because they're not sitting and looking right in your eye
Yeah.
or whatever. If they're hanging out near you, if they're smiling, if they like you, and if they prompt you to keep on giving them more information, because that's one of the things that kids do by repeating themselves over and over and over again,
Mhm.
even an action over and over and over again, is they're prompting you to connect with them. And like you said, the most important thing, watch them. See what, if you can't hear it because they're not using speech, see through their behavior what
Yes.
they're communicating. And it's not just what they need, it's why are they frustrated?
Right.
Why are they mad? Why
Right.
are they, why is he covering you in kisses all of a sudden? What does this mean? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a meltdown. It can
Yeah.
be any kind of nonverbal communication. But when you connect and you see the message behind those behaviors, you can see it. That's where the intuition comes in, because
Yes.
you know this child. You see where it's coming from, and then what I call stop, drop, and roll, just like a fire, right? Instead of reacting, you respond appropriately. Instead of fueling the fire with
Right.
more yelling and screaming, you
Right.
see where it's coming from, you
Yeah.
find the root cause, and you put that out. Oh, you're just worried about whatever. And a lot of late talkers are worried about talking. It's just like introverted, shy talkers are the same. They don't like to give presentations in front of an audience.
Yep.
For a late talker, meeting up with a friend on the playground feels just as anxious to them
Yes.
because they're
Yeah.
not good at talking and they don't want to be judged by someone else. So, you as a parent, your role in those things, instead of worrying and stepping in, kind of like you did, and talking for them,
Mhm.
is do a little pre-teaching. Like, if you know this environment is potentially anxiety causing for your late
Yes.
talker, equip
Yes.
them before you go. Hey, there's going to be
Right.
kids there. They're going to be talking to you. I know there's a slide. You like the slide. Let's go to the
Mhm.
slide and talk about the slide. And then you engage the late talker in conversation, like you said, with your kiddo at
Mhm.
their level,
Yep.
using the hand signals and level where they are, because you know where they are. And then what's going to happen is other people will observe you. Other
Yes.
people will see how you interact, and then they'll learn how to interact in a nice way that
Right.
won't throw the wrench in the works, is what
Right.
everybody's worried about. Somebody's going to have a meltdown or
Right.
somebody's going to react in the wrong way. And everybody's worried about all that. And that's the
Right.
distraction you're
Yes.
talking about that keeps you out of the moment. Because now, if you're prepped ahead, you're in intention versus
Yes.
distraction. You're, hey, let's go to the playground and connect with kids and talk with them.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't give their late talkers credit for being able to understand all of that stuff. And most late talkers are far better at understanding than they are at speaking. So just slow down,
Yep.
carefully break down the situation for them, and
Right.
you'll get it happens
Right.
immediate connection. And then you use the resources around you that trust
Right.
that you have them, that you can do it. You know the kiddo, you know what's going on, you know what's around, you have good
Yes.
problem solving skills. You can do this.
Yes. It's funny because just with all that you've said and then these comments, one of the things I think about is it's hard for a lot of parents to be present. We often go to the catastrophic thinking and we want to avoid the meltdowns. We want to avoid something happening, but we don't realize that all of our sweeping ahead to try to avoid the anxiety or avoid the blow up or whatever is actually interfering with the development.
Yeah.
And same when we want to blame, when we play the blame game and we get, so it's like being stuck in the past keeps you stuck and not moving forward because you're so busy trying to blame that you're not actually moving forward dealing with What am I, what
You're
is the
not here,
situation
you're
right
somewhere
now?
else. Your
Right.
mind is worrying about what you did in the
Exactly.
past or what you could do in the future. Is this
Yeah.
pill gonna help my kid? Is this therapy gonna help my kid? Is this whatever
Right.
gonna when you know what you're doing
Yep.
is guided to make a change, then
Right.
you trust it
Yep.
and you don't spend time worrying about it. You spend time
Yeah.
interacting with your kid. And
Exactly.
that's why it happens faster because you're not waiting for the speech therapist to show up on Thursday at 10 a.m. every other week. It happens all day, every day because that's why people who join my platform and watch yours too, they want
Mhm.
to be equipped and empowered.
Yes.
They don't want to farm this out to somebody else.
Right.
They want to connect and get the best results because the best results come from you. And that's the other thing that is distracting. And we can talk about this all day. There are providers out there, lots and lots of options for you, shiny, shiny objects with remedies and pills and therapies and programs and all of this stuff. And I've got one too. So does Jennifer. But the difference when you evaluate these programs is to look at your role. If you're passing this off to a
Agreed.
pill, a thing, a program, a
Yeah.
protocol, a X, Y, or Z that you didn't develop yourself, then you're fooling yourself. You're missing the magic, as Jennifer would say.
Right. Well, it speaks to the point of, and I used to be, and this was the old healthcare model that I had where I was a practitioner, took my nursing and I would see patients, but I realized, you know what? I don't want people coming to me, handing me their problems and saying, fix me. I want to empower people just like you want to empower people with tools to tune in to what is it that they need to be not just successful, but to thrive. And
Yes.
then that's like, we are empowerment coaches in a way. We want to empower you. So if you're listening and you're thinking like, oh, I can't even, I don't have time to take a shower, let alone be a speech therapist. I hear you. I've been you. I get exactly where you are. However, it comes down to just taking tiny little moments, like bite-sized moments, and
Yes.
just pausing for a moment to connect to what is the big picture here? What is it that I need? But then what is it that my child needs? And if you want more peace in your life, it's worth it. It is worth it to just take those moments to pause and to connect, even if it means you might be smelly for one more day because you forego the shower to actually connect with your child. So, Marci, do you have any kind of parting words of wisdom? And can you please let my listeners know how can they connect with you?
Yes. So the parting words of wisdom are it doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter why they're late talking. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It does not matter anything outside of your connection with that child. Nothing else matters. If you have access to the internet and you can watch videos, visit wavesofcommunication.com. I always do this with my hand if you're watching on video to see I'm making a wave action to know that it's waves of communication, to talk about the energy, to talk about the ups and downs, to talk about all the things. And there are 450 plus videos there with suggestions. Every video equips and empowers parents with real strategies to, first of all, connect and then figure out what's going on and then take what I call inspired action. Because without inspired action, you're not going to get anywhere. But with inspired action, you get everywhere. And the inspiration part is that magic that we're talking about. And the inspiration comes through you to the late talker. Now, you might be watching videos and reading books and things like that, and that's what you'll do. But once you start watching videos, you'll learn that I've got a workbook, I've got an audio book, and a book, and they're all available on Amazon. If you look at Marci Melzer and Waves of Communication, you'll be able to find all of my information. I talk about them all the time. You can learn how to do it. I even do free Q&A, so you can join me and ask me questions on YouTube every Thursday. So tons of resources because again, I'm like you. I know that the real power is in these parents. It's not in therapists. And I know that therapists can help you if you use them as resources and not just your fixer uppers,
Right.
but because they're smart. They've got
Right.
tons, just like Jennifer's a beautifully smart, brilliant RN who used her knowledge of schooling, was gifted a child who she needed it for. Right. And now she's in a world where she can train other people to use their natural things. And if they don't know about nursing, she can teach them about it. If they don't know about speech, she can send them over here. If they don't know about potty training or behavior, and we are a community, I'm sure all of us, the people that you're connecting with, right? So that everyone out there can
Yep.
realize, first of all, how powerful you are and how powerful your child is. When
Yes.
you equip them, you're going to see results that look like magic.
That's amazing. It's all about tools in the toolbox. I love to say it's tools in the toolbox. So if you need some more tools, click on Marci's Waves of Communication website and download some of her amazing, phenomenal tools. And if you are looking for tools to help manage your stress and to help you find hope and healing and happiness in your challenges, connect with me, jenniferrentolo.com. Thank you, Marci, for being here. And I want to invite my listeners to keep listening, keep following. If you like this, like it, subscribe, and follow us on our journey when we plant our feet on the ground and reach for the stars.
Yes,
Be
and on
well,
my
everyone.
followers on the Waves of Communication channel, this is shared across there too, because we have this beautiful technology to be able to do this live. Jennifer's resources are amazing. If you're one of those families that's in the tilting between the evidence base and the woo woo and all of that stuff, and you've got people yelling at you, evidence, 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 and you've got me saying it's not always all about the evidence.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to balance them together, Jennifer's stress resources are amazing, and really take these on, because I am thrilled to be able to share them with my audience and very thrilled to connect with you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Marci. So stick with us and let's be empowered together.
That's right.
Be well, everyone.